Hey, good afternoon, Realtors. This is Byron King, South Carolina Association of Realtors. It's January 11th, 2018. Thank you for joining the Forms Update with 2017 Forms Chair Liz Loadholt. 2018 Forms Chair is Joy McMillan. And as always, Mike Christ is doing the webinar producing. Just a quick heads up, January 22 through 24th is our Leadership and Capital Conference. March 8th is the Women's Conference. Laura Derrick is our president for 2018. Hello and thank you for joining today's webinar. A quick note before we get started. Liz will be making references to a handout throughout the presentation today. To view this handout, please click the blue link in your GoToWebinar control panel that says Handouts for New SCR Forms.pdf under the Handouts section. You should see the handout pull up on your screen. If you're watching this in the future on YouTube, please check the video description for a link to the handouts. And now let's introduce our presenter. Liz, like I said, is the #1 all-time most viewed SCR webinar presenter on her Forms Update 2017. This is her Forms Update for 2018. And Liz Loadholt, aka Mama Liz Loadholt, has been involved in real estate industry since 1976. First as a sales associate, then a co-owner, broker in charge, then co-owner of a Caldwell Banker franchise, then employee of a corporate Caldwell Banker, then and now co-founder of the agent-owned Realty. She and her husband, Boyd Loadholt, have always worked as a team. They live in Mount Pleasant, a suburb of Charleston, South Carolina. Liz has written several courses for South Carolina continuing education, serving on the committee to write a core course for the South Carolina Real Estate Commission, and served on a committee to rework the South Carolina real estate license laws. She served as vice chair of the South Carolina Association of Realtors Forms Committee in 2016, and served as chairman of the South Carolina Association of Realtors Forms Committee in 2017. Liz is certified to teach 18 courses for South Carolina continuing education and is also designated IDEC as a certified distance instruction education instructor. Liz holds a BS in mathematics from Winthrop University and currently is broker in charge of 4 offices for agent-owned Realty, as well as serving as its relocation director and training. Her hobbies include her grandchildren, 3 of them, shagging, the South Carolina State Dance with Boyd, social networking, and a real estate company. A breast cancer survivor, 11 years now. Liz's special interests include breast cancer research, and local community charities. Thanks for presenting today, Liz.
Great, Byron. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. I am thrilled to be back here again today with all of you. And before we get started today, I wanted to remind you that if you have questions during this presentation, to type your questions in. Byron and I believe maybe Austin, maybe they'll answer your questions. If not, you can always, after the program is over, get in touch with the hotline and they will answer your questions. We are going to go through this and it may take a little longer than an hour, and if you have to leave, we understand that. Before I get started into the forms, actually new forms and the changes to the forms, I did want to, yes, I do. Okay, sorry. I do want to go over something that's not new, actually, but it's something that has been brought to my attention that some of the agents throughout our state and several different association of realtors are completing this page 8 of our contract form incorrectly. Apparently, a lot of people are putting the realtor, Association of Realtors address instead of their address. So I'm going to go over this section real quickly about how it should be completed. This is page 8 of our SCR 300 and 310, which are the contracts we typically use mostly, and page 9 of the general contract, SCR 330. And I just took one section of that page and thought we would go through it quickly to make sure everybody understands how it is supposed to be completed. The licensee, this would be your name, would go there. South Carolina license number, this is your real estate license number, the agent who's doing the contract. Expires, this would be your expiration date, hopefully 2018 or 2019. If not that date, we got other problems. Broker in charge would be your broker in charge's name. South Carolina license number would be the license number of your broker in charge. And expires is the expiration date of your broker in charge's license. I have seen some people sticking in this license number section, the MLS numbers, so we're talking about the LLR numbers here. Your brokerage company name is the company of brokerage name, whom you work with. In the next section, there are boxes. And when I teach my courses, I'm always telling people, if there's a line of boxes, choose one, check a box. So you'll probably hear me say that again today during the presentation. We have boxes here. The intention is you would check one box. You either are a buyer agent, now this is for the buyer section, and the same thing applies for the seller section. You either are a buyer agent, you're a seller sub-agent, you're a dual agent, you're a buyer designated agent, you're a custom facilitator, or you are a transaction broker. Check one box, only one. I might say here too right now when I'm doing it, because I see this come up a good bit. Buyer designated agent. A designated agent is only a designated agent if you have the two agents have the same broker in charge. So I've seen this become an issue several times. Members of what association or board of realtors? This would be the name of your association of realtors. And this is where the problems start to come in, it seems. Notice address. This is your work address, not your board address, but your company address, your work address. Notice email or fax. This will be your work email and your work fax number, not the board email or fax number. Your mobile phone. This is your mobile phone number, not your board mobile phone number or your board number. The office phone is your office phone, not the board office phone. And the other line, you can put any of your contact info that you desire in addition to the above and or description of your role in the transaction as a realtor / brokerage. You don't have anything to put there, you can put NA. Again, in your boxes, who you represent, only check one box. And Byron has suggested, I think it's a great idea, for the listing reps to consider filling out this information and posting it into the MLS associated documents so the buyer rep has this info when they're writing an offer. I think that's an outstanding suggestion. This is a very useful suggestion, so please always complete this info on all transactions. You have a Zip Forms account as a SCR member. Please consider using a template with this info pre-entered for yourself and your brokerage as a huge time-saving measure. Now we're going to go into the new forms and the changes. And these are the forms, I'm going to list the forms that we're going to talk about today. There are 12 of them. The SCR 310 and SCR 300. This is your subject to financing contract, also known as repair procedure contract. The SCR 330 is your general use contract. The SCR 311 is your due diligence addendum. SCR 525 is repair addendum. SCR 313 is your notice of termination. SCR 504 is the sales of buyer's property addendum. And 505 is the contingency release addendum. SCR 391, clauses for addendum. SCR 393 is our short sale addendum. SCR 610 is the wire fraud warning addendum. And SCR 620 is our earnest money disclosure form. All of these forms have been added since July of 2017, added or changed since 2017, July. Okay, before we get into our SCR forms, I wanted to point out to you that LLR does have one change in their forms. The residential property disclosure form, LLR did change it. Don't want you to panic and think, oh my gosh, what have I missed? This is what the LLR form looks like now, and I did highlight the spots that were changed. Actually, only 2 in the material that have been changed. That is number 1 in your handout. If you wanted to refer to it, number 1 in the handout. Well, looking at the actual changes on the property disclosure form. If the owner is assisted in the sale of property by a real estate licensee, owner remains solely responsible for completing and delivering this disclosure statement to the purchaser. The real estate licensee must disclose material adverse facts about the property if actually known by the licensee. Those are the changes. The yellow indicates a change. The word material was added to adverse facts, and they changed the, put the word actual in. It used to say should have been known. I went through this form word for word to make sure there were no other changes. This shows the only change on the form. I can assure you, I've gone through the entire form word for word, as I said. Then, of course, the revised date at the bottom is changed. Now, if a licensee knows of a material adverse fact and the seller did not disclose it, the agent must disclose it. So I thought it would be a good idea if we looked at the definition of a material adverse fact so that we know what it is we have to disclose if the seller does not disclose it. The definition is a condition or occurrence that is generally recognized as significantly and adversely affecting the value of real estate, or significantly reducing the structural integrity of improvements to real estate, or presenting a significant health risk to occupants of the real estate, or information that indicates that a party to a transaction is not able to or does not intend to meet an obligation under a contract or an agreement made concerning the transaction. These are the things that are a material adverse fact that LLR is saying that a licensee must disclose even if the seller does not do so. So now we'll move into the SCR forms. And the first thing we look at here is number 2 in your handout is SCR 300. It's the agreement to buy and sell real estate, residential/condo. This is exactly the same as the SCR 310 with the exception of the word condo that is at the top. But everything else in this contract form is identical to our 310. So today I am going to look at and spend my time on the 310. It is number 3 in your handout. This is our agreement to buy and sell. It's also known as the subject to financing contract, also known as the repair procedure contract. It was revised in September of 2017. It's number 3 in your handout if you want to follow along. Another thing that I'd like to point out about this is at the very bottom of the page, it says, I don't know where the initials are, it says 9/217 form 310, page 1 of 8. I love having that date down at the bottom of the form on every page. It helps us all to make sure we have the correct form. So in the SCR 310 and 300, our changes are earnest money, repair procedure clause, CL 100, and then we have minor changes also. But the 3 major changes are the earnest money, repair procedure clause, and the CL 100 paragraph. So getting right into the earnest money, this is what the earnest money section looked like before. It has changed, and we're going to show you what the new section looks like. This is just so you understand this is, and feel more familiar with this section. That's why I'm showing that to you. This is being discussed first because there was a major change in our contract form. This is a real hot issue in South Carolina now. There have been and are issues with LLR regarding brokers releasing earnest money according to the contract. The primary change, earnest money disbursement, requiring a disbursement document signed by all parties or a judge, will take the contract back to our pre-2012 procedures. And it follows a broker in charge winning his contractual disbursement of earnest money case at LLR. But LLR staff continuing to investigate broker in charges for contractual disbursement of earnest money, and the commissioners making statements that these investigations will continue. So I thought it'd be a good idea to take a look at what our South Carolina license law actually says about disbursing earnest money. And this is definitely taken from the license law. It is section 4057-136. If a dispute concerning the entitlement to and disposition of trust funds arises between a buyer and a seller, and the dispute is not resolved by reasonable interpretation of the contract by the parties to the contract, the deposit must be held in the trust account until the dispute is resolved by a written agreement which directs the disposition of monies signed by all parties who claim an interest in the trust monies, and must be separate from the contract which directs the broker in charge or property manager in charge to hold the monies, or filing of an interpleader action in a court of competent jurisdiction, or an order of a court of competent jurisdiction, or voluntary mediation. Folks, this is what our license law says about a broker in charge dispersing earnest money. It's pretty clear. Could only disperse it if you've got a signed agreement by the parties or a court gives you an order to disperse it. Pretty simple. So we have written our earnest money section of the contract to abide by, definitely abides by the law, 100%. This is in yellow because it is new, it's changed. Earnest money, we have a total of blank USD. Earnest money is paid as follows. You have blank accompanies this offer, and blank will be paid within blank business days after the effective date. So basically here, guys, we're just, if it's $4,000 earnest money, $4,000 goes in the first blank. If they are giving you the whole $4,000 when you write the offer, then $4,000 goes in the second blank. And then when blank will pay back paid, that would be NA or 0. And blank business days would be NA or 0. However, if somebody, their earnest money is $4,000, they give you $2,000. So you're going to put $4,000. Sorry, guys. You're going to put $4,000 in the top line, and then $2,000 accompanies this offer, and $2,000 will be paid within 3 business days, 4 business days, whatever you choose. And then earnest money is in the form of a check, cash, or other. Other would be normally wire, but you have a blank line where you write what the other is. And here is a case where we have check marks, boxes. Check a box. Either it's going to be check, it's going to be cash, or it's going to be other. So check a box. Is to be a credit to buyer at closing, or dispersed only as parties agree in writing, or by court order, or by contract, or is required for closing by closing attorney. Buyer and seller authorize blank. Whoever is going to be holding the earnest money is what would go there. Is it a real estate company? Is it agent on realty? Is it XYZ Realty? Is it an attorney? Who that check is written to is what would go there, and they need to match. As escrow agent to deposit and hold and disperse earnest money according to the terms of any separate escrow agreement, the law, and any regulations. Broker does not guarantee payment of a check or checks accepted as earnest money. Parties direct escrow agent to communicate reasonable information confirming receipt and status of earnest money upon a broker request. This is the new verbiage for the earnest money section. We said I have it in yellow because it's a change. There are some advantages here in having this blank business days for the earnest money to be delivered. One huge advantage for us this year, since the law changed in 2017 about how long an agent can hold on to earnest money. If an agent receives an earnest money check, as you all know, you cannot hold it more than the 24 hours. It has to be turned into the broker. This would help that. So they just say that earnest money will be paid within 2 business days or whatever. That's a real help. The huge disadvantage here is the agent forgets to collect the earnest money. So there are pros and cons for that section. Language throughout the contract about who is entitled to the earnest money remains so the judge can decide who gets the earnest money. You will see no place in these forms now where it says earnest money goes back to the buyer. Earnest money will be returned to the buyer. You're not going to see that anywhere in any of these forms now. But for example, if financing contingency says that the buyer is trying to get a loan, but is turned down, then terminates the contract, the buyer gets the earnest money. Judge would likely award the earnest money to the buyer. Language throughout this contract about who is entitled to earnest money remains so that a judge can make the decision about who gets the earnest money if it comes to that. Continue with the earnest money section. The parties understand and agree that under all circumstances, including default, Escrow agent will not disperse earnest money deposit to either party until both parties have executed an agreement authorizing the disbursement. That is a SCR 518, SCR 517, or mediation agreement. Now, I've stuck the green words in here in greens just for those who can't remember what these different forms are. The SCR 518 is the release of contract form. The 517 is our disbursement form. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but we have all these forms have numbers, and I have not memorized all these forms numbers yet. So I have to keep writing the names down beside them. And I've done that throughout the day to help you as well. So unless both parties have executed an agreement authorizing the disbursement, until a court of competent jurisdiction has directed a disbursement, earnest money will not be dispersed until determined to be good funds. If legal actions occur related to earnest money, the party receiving the least amount of earnest money in the court's disbursement order agrees to indemnify escrow agent's fees, court costs, and attorney fees. If the interpleader is to be utilized, parties agree that blank dollars shall be paid to the escrow agent by the parties as compensation before the escrow agent initiates court of competent jurisdiction proceedings on the earnest money. So how much money should go there? If it's going to be an interpleader in the small claims court, $100 is enough to take care of that. Typically, small claim fees are in the $90 range somewhere. So if $100 is there, that should be enough. Contractual disbursement of earnest money language is in the contract so that the court can allocate disbursement. Of course, this is about this dispersing the earnest money as if a broker in charge is holding the earnest money. If an attorney is holding the earnest money, they have different rules to go by. So we're really stressing here and emphasizing our contract form if a broker in charge is holding the earnest money. Only disperse broker in charge held earnest money with a disbursement agreement signed by the parties or a competent court judge. I'm telling you guys, we broker in charges must abide by this. Only disperse broker in charge earnest money with a disbursement agreement signed by the parties or a competent court judge. A broker in charge should hold trust money otherwise in safekeeping. Only the broker in charge holding the money may volunteer to pay and sue the buyers and sellers in a magistrate interpleader lawsuit. Remembering the maximum is $7,500 for this small claims court. Parties should be told to seek legal counsel. We should always remember to do that. Our NAR Ethics Article 13. A broker in charge won his license law case at LLR, but LLR continues to target broker in charges for contractual disbursement of earnest money. The SCR Forms states who gets the earnest money in certain situations, and the judge can use this language to award the earnest money. Parties can self-settle or hire a mediator to help them self-settle. The mediation agreement, a release of contract, which has a release of the earnest money and a disbursement, release of contract and disbursement agreement, and then the 517 is a disbursement agreement without a release of the contract. So those are the ways that a broker in charge can disperse earnest money. Caution, only disperse broker in charge held earnest money with a disbursement agreement signing by the parties or a competent court judge. Can't say that enough. We don't want LLR coming after any of us. So that's our earnest money section. Then we're moving on to repair procedure section. And this is what our section 8 repair procedure looked like before. You're going to see some rather significant changes here in the next few slides. This is our section 8. There's been a lot of discussion about repair procedure versus due diligence contracts. And I've found that so many people just don't understand due diligence. I mean, every day I'm scratching my head, but why? What are you talking about? The additional language explaining how due diligence and repair procedure works was proposed by the 2016 SCR President, Realtor David Kent, and his reaction to unprofessional licensees not using due diligence and repair procedure professionally. This will help to make the profession practice of real estate in South Carolina so much easier for us realtors. There's so much confusion about this subject. that we've added the paragraph in yellow to assist in helping licensees and buyers understand the difference between repair procedure and due diligence. The yellow is new. The due diligence addendum, that is your SCR 311, can create advantages for buyer and seller by creating a known limited time frame for a buyer to make a decision to buy or not buy, or buy with new terms, that is, seller agreed repairs or price. Per the due diligence addendum, the seller can receive money when the buyer timely, properly terminates for any or no reason on the due diligence addendum. The due diligence addendum covers a broad range of issues, not just repairs and price. The due diligence addendum allows the buyer to consider on-site and off-site issues. As you can see here, we're trying to help the public understand due diligence, and we're helping the agents understand due diligence. I hear a lot of people saying due diligence is only for repair issues. That's not true. The seller can receive earnest money when the buyer timely, properly terminates for any or no reason whatsoever on a due diligence addendum. This paragraph is all new. If the parties agree to a due diligence addendum, then during the due diligence period, the buyer may take timely, prudent steps to help buyer/inspectors, seller/estimators, and realtors all have adequate time for the buyer to coordinate inspections and repair requests, for the seller to obtain repair estimates, the buyer and seller to negotiate repairs, and buyer to potentially, timely, properly due diligence terminate or buy. Delivering a repair request does not extend the due diligence period. This is underlined in bold in your contract form. Delivering a repair request does not extend the due diligence period. We have a lot of problems with this in the community, and I know you brokers out there who are on the webinar have had the same problems I've had. It's getting our agents to understand delivering a repair request does not extend the due diligence period. The purpose is to get folks to understand the importance of getting inspections done and getting repair requests to the seller in time for the seller to obtain repair estimates and for the buyer and seller to negotiate repairs during the due diligence period. Be professional with due diligence. Get your repair request in before the last day of due diligence. Let's all be professional about how we handle this. And only the yellow here is new or changed. All repair procedure inspections shall be completed no later than blank business days after the contract's original primary effective date, unless all the parties agree in writing to extend. The rest of this is the same as we had it before. So the big change here is that we've gone from a calendar date to blank business days from the contract's original primary effective date. Original primary effective date. And we're going to talk about this definition of effective date a little bit later. But we felt this change would benefit those that have a contract going back and forth for several days, and all of a sudden the calendar date that they had inserted here was no good. So the business days makes a lot more sense. Now with the number of business days, this should be much, much easier. It helps also if you have a backup contract, hence the word primary effective date. And we're still in section 8 of 310, which was section 3 in your, number 3 in your handouts. Not much change in this paragraph. It's in yellow what has been changed. The yellow is not changed. Also here we are addressing the fact that if a seller does not respond at all during the number of days mentioned, so we've added in here if the seller does not timely respond per above. We've had several situations and there were many hotline calls about the seller didn't respond at all. So what do we do? So now we've addressed that issue for you. And just for, I can't pass this by without mentioning at the bottom of this paragraph, very bottom, toward the bottom, it talks about as is, and it gives the definition for as is. There are so many different definitions out there in the workplace about as is, but The definition is in this contract form for this contract of what it means. So I want to point that out to you in case you haven't noticed it. Moving on to our next big change in the 310 contract is section 11 of 310, and that is still on number 3 in your handout. This is what the SCR 100 infestation paragraph looked like prior. This is what it looks like now. Only the yellow are changes, makes it easier for you to recognize the change. We've made this paragraph contingent or not contingent. You can decide whether the contract is contingent on a CL 100 or not contingent on a CL 100. This was proposed by the SCR Executive Committee members, Realtor Sin and Witzel. This will make the practice of pen and ink striking, initial, and dating the paragraph easier for realtors. In the past, a lot of realtors have just X'd out this paragraph, had it initialed and dated. Now that's not going to be necessary. Many lenders are not requiring a CL 100, and there are times when one is not wanted. Personally, I would not like to ever see one of my realtors X this section out or say not contingent. I feel CL 100s are critical, and buyers need to know what they're buying. Also, another change to this paragraph you see in yellow, we have added who will have delivered to the closing the CL 100 letter. So you will check a box. Either the buyer or seller will deliver to closing. One or the other has got to get it there, so check a box. The second paragraph of the CL 100 is unchanged, so I have not even brought it up here. So now we're going to move on to a few of the minor changes in the contract. And some folks say they're not so minor, but they're nice ones, they're nice changes. So looking back at page 1 of your handout, section 3, your handout piece number 3, section 1, page 1, where they give the definitions. Let's look at the definition of effective date. This is a very important part of the contracts. The final date upon which a party to the negotiation places the final and required signatures and/or initials and date on this contract and delivers notice to initially cause this primary contract to be binding on all parties. The addition of the word primary came because there had been some confusion about what is the effective date when a contract is a backup. So this will clarify that. So when a contract is a backup, it becomes a primary contract, becomes the effective date. It's whenever that backup becomes a primary contract, means this is the effective date for this contract. This will clarify for due diligence also, clarify for the repair procedure deadline. So this is a real good addition, in my opinion. It's still on page 1 of handout 3. The purchase price, and I have in yellow here the change. But I would like to point out something before I talk about that. You notice it says payable by transfer of good funds via finance, combination of finance and cash, or cash. Check a box. It is one of those 3. Check a box. Verification of cash available for closing. Either it's attached, it's not attached, or it's going to be delivered. Check a box. And then the third line, the contract is or is not contingent upon the sale and closing of buyer's real property, and the SCR 504 either is or is not attached. The 504 is the addendum for the sale of the buyer's property. So I like this change a lot. Moving on. Number 3 is still on page 1 of your handout 3. Talking about the property. There are people that want to argue about the operable condition. The idea of the contract is that the stove and oven in the house is operable. Any fixtures or listed personal property is operable. It might not work like new, but it does operate. This allows a judge to decide if the buyers and sellers want to argue if something is operable or not. Also, we've added finance equipment and solar panels in this property. paragraph, which I think are great additions. All right, and conveyance of closing, we're still on page 1 of 310 and handout number 3. The only change here is it says parties agree to hire or use licensed attorneys. That was added to this paragraph. So no other change there. On transaction costs, which is paragraph 6 of your SCR 310 and still number 3 in the handout. The only change here is down under the section about the transfer fees, who's going to pay them. There's a yellow line. It's yellow on my screen, but not yellow on your contract. It's yellow because it's new. This line was added as to give people space for something. If someone wanted to limit the amount of transfer fee they're going to pay, the seller might say, "Okay, I'm okay with paying transfer fees, but I'm not going to pay more than $4,000 or more than $1,000." You would write that there. Maybe the buyer says, "I'm okay, but I will only pay $2,000." So it's a place for you to write that in. Finance section. Again, the change is in yellow, so there's not a big change here. There's a lot of argument over what is a reasonable pre-final loan approval. I've heard so much discussion on that. So the Forms Committee has tried to assist you with that by giving examples. Basically, anything from a lender that says the buyer is approved without any unreasonable credit, income, or asset conditions. So it says in there pre-final loan approval, and the yellow part, that is pre-approval letter, initial approval letter. Guys, we're not talking about a pre-qual letter here. We're talking about pre-approval. So anything from a lender that says that the buyer is pre-approved would be sufficient for this. The survey section, which is paragraph 12 of your contract, still SCR 310 contract and number 3 in your handouts. We just added the word beachfront and flood contents here. Again, to assist realtors in assisting their buyers. Some additional changes on page 8. You see in yellow here, after customer, involved is who you're representing as a buyer or seller. You're one of these, as we said before, but it used to say customer representative, and now it says customer facilitator. That's the only change there. All right, so we finished 310 and the major changes. The major changes were earnest money, CL 100, and I'm drawing a blank. CL 100, earnest money. Y'all all telling me right now, I know, you're telling me what it is. So why am I drawing a blank? Repair procedure clause, of course, a major part. Earnest money, repair procedure clause, and CL 100. The brain started working, which is kind of nice to have that. All right, we're going to move on to have the brain working, that is. We're moving on to the 330, SCR 330, which is our general contract. And I wanted to show you what it looked like before. This is the one that was revised in January 2017. But we've always also revised it again in November of 2017. And this is number 4 in your handouts. For the most part, the changes here are simply to make the language the same as our 300 and 310. Earnest money section and due diligence sections are the main changes here. But I'm going to go through the changes, even though we've already talked about them in the 310. I'm going to go through them quickly. It's number 4 in your handout. And we'll start on the first page this time with the definition of effective date. And again, we have the yellow changes. We added the words initially and primary to make it just like our 300 and 310. And in this section, we made it the same, identical as in 310 and 300. The contract is or is not contingent upon the sale, and SCR 504 is or is not attached. 330, the property is now the same as in the 310 and 300. We've made the verbiage exactly the same. Make your life so much easier. Number 4, the conveyance section. Again, we've added the word parties agree to hire or use licensed attorney. Now on the general, notice above where it used to be on the general contract that the number of days was automatically typed in the form and you didn't add that. But now when you say that the closing conveys on or before whatever date, closing date, with the automatic extension of, now you are inputting the number of business days in there. It is not automatically typed. So that is one change. The earnest money section, this is exactly like the 310 that we just went through and our 300, exactly. Again, still earnest money, exactly the same as 300 and 310. The transfer fees, again, the same thing. We added that yellow line for the same purpose as we have it in the 310 and 300. Finance, same as the 300 and 310. Same thing we just talked about. The survey section, same thing. Just inserted the words beachfront and flood contents. Again, the same to try to help realtors. The due diligence, and this is coming with a change in the form, the 330 form. We have made this to be like our SCR 311, which is a due diligence addendum. And I'm actually going to go through the due diligence addendum form in depth in just a little bit, so I won't go through it here. But I'm just letting you know that this is just, they've changed it to make it just like our due diligence addendum, which is the form SCR 311. Again, we've done this as the same to make it the same as our 311 due diligence addendum. Now, mediation paragraph. This paragraph was changed from what we had in 330 before to the paragraph that's identical to what is in 300 and 310. So really, this makes some pretty big changes to our 330, but I love it because it is the same wording and same verbiage that we have in the 300 and 310, which makes our life much easier. And again, on this paragraph 35, we've added the same wording that's in our 300 and 310. Understand that audiovisual surveillance may occur. That was not in our 330 before. And page 8 of actually it's page 9 of the 330 contract, the customer representative was changed to customer facilitator. Now we can move on to our due diligence addendum, which is SCR 311. It is number 5 in your handout if you want to pull it up and go follow along with me in it. It looks different. The intention is to help agents who don't have a clue about due diligence. We've tried to put everything in here to explain to the agents and explain to the public what due diligence is about. We can see here there are more explanations. Sellers and buyers both recognize the advantages in a due diligence contract. The sellers may avoid entangling their property and losing marketing time with a buyer who does not want to buy. Sellers may get paid an agreed upon due diligence termination fee if a buyer timely, properly terminates. So there's some explanation here. Again, everything in white here is the same as it was before. Then we get down here, the due diligence period ends no later than blank business days after the contract's original primary effective date. The word primary was added there. So this is a big help because if you have a backup contract, there was always confusion in the past about, well, when is my effective date? Now we have it. When the backup becomes primary is the effective date, which is a big help with a due diligence addendum. And then the next paragraph is new. During the due diligence period, the buyer may take timely, prudent steps to help the buyer/inspectors, sellers/estimators, and realtors all have adequate time for the buyer to coordinate inspections and repair requests, for the seller to obtain repair estimates, for the buyer and seller to negotiate repairs, and for buyer to potentially, timely, properly due diligence, terminate, or buy. This paragraph was added. The purpose, again, is to try to explain in the form to realtors and the public what due diligence is all about. Again, the yellow is new. During the due diligence period, the seller agrees the buyer may rely on the following list of 5 items in accordance with contract and laws. The buyer is solely responsible for inspections. The buyer is not required to inspect until buyer timely, properly terminates the contract, or the parties agree on an amended contract. The buyer can rely on number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. Time is of the essence. Delivering a repair request does not extend the due diligence period. We're saying this again. Delivering a repair request does not extend the due diligence period. Be very careful about that. Then we come to the list. The yellow again is what was added. Conduct to obtain inspections, that is on-site and off-site conditions. Number 2, deliver repair request notice to seller. That is the SCR 525 with all repair requests, all portions of reports. And again, I've added in green what the SCR 525 is. It's the repair addendum. Or they can proceed under an amended contract. That is the SCR 310, which is your contract, and the SCR 525, which is the repair addendum, SCR 390, which is a general addendum, SCR 391, clauses for addendum. So all of these could be part of amended contract. Proceed under an as-is contract. That is, the buyer desires to buy anyway. The buyer wants property without repair. And 5, they can terminate the contract by timely, properly delivering notice of termination and termination fee. Still on 311, our due diligence contract. This paragraph, really the only change was the word only was added in there. And then the bottom, must be sure this is properly signed, dated, and timed. You'll notice the initial boxes are missing off the bottom of the page. Everybody's so thankful for that. So that's our due diligence addendum. And remember, I'm here today to really talk about the changes in the forms and not to really teach the forms. But I know that sometimes along the line, I do tend to offer my opinion on how things should be done. But my purpose is to show you the changes today in the form. I was looking at 525, SCR 525, which this is the old form, the way it looked before, and our form does look different now. This is the new form, and it's number 6 in your handout if you want to follow along. This was revised September of 2017. The repair addendum, the top part's the same as it was before. Then we look at repairs. The thing that in yellow is what was added. Parties agree their intent in the contract is that sellers will always hire qualified repair workers, that is LLR licensed, bonded, insured contractors, electricians, plumbers, roofers, builders, HVAC workers, structural engineers, environmental specialists, pool workers, pest control workers, for all repairs except the most basic repairs. For example, the seller might be qualified to adequately paint a portion of the property or remove a dead tree or other basic repairs. And then there's a yellow line. That yellow line right there is in case a buyer is okay with the seller doing some minor repair. You would write it on that line. That's the purpose of that line. Repair-related documents, the yellow again is new. That is inspection reports, engineer reports, service documents, repair recommendations. They either are or are not attached. Guys, There's choice, 2 boxes. Pick a box, check a box. This new form has a lot of instructions for the realtors using the form. You'll note they've added the contractors should use licensed contractors. The contractors should be licensed contractors. I really like that that was added to our form. Purpose of the line at the bottom is if the buyer is okay with seller doing certain repairs, they will write it in there, as I said. I feel you should always write requested repairs on the lines that are given. I personally don't like an agent saying, see inspection report attached. I personally think that's very unprofessional, but that's my opinion. And that's not what I'm here to do today, right? Okay. The yellow again is new. Parties agree that seller shall complete the repairs no later than blank business days prior to closing. This becomes your repair deadline. And then the buyer shall deliver repairs, cure notice, if any, to the seller of any repair inspection results, no later than blank business days prior to closing. And then seller shall cure any repair issues, if any, thereby by completing the repairs no later than blank business days prior to closing. Note, best practice is to insert descending numbers in these blanks. Any repairs not covered by a contract becomes the responsibility of the buyer upon closing. That in white was there all along. Best practices for agreeing upon repairs are to write in the blank lines above. 1, the repairs. 2, a specific reference to a specific repair recommendation in a specific attached document, that is, inspection report. 3, to avoid vague repair requests, vaguely referencing an attached document. That's what I was talking about. And 4, if using repair procedure, notate each repair as seller paid repairs. That is, make improvement structurally sound, address environmental concerns, make roof free of leaks, make systems, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, water supply, disposal, operable, and or, quote, not seller paid repairs, end quote. Number 4 is not applicable in due diligence. In due diligence, the parties can agree in writing on the companies and personnel who will conduct the repair actions. When you talk in the first paragraph about these days here, there are 3 blanks to fill in business days prior to closing. You have to be reasonable. You need descending numbers, and we tell you that in the form. If you say 3, 2, 1, that's not reasonable. Because once you notify the seller, if you notify the seller 3 days prior to closing, then the buyer has to get the inspector back out there. They don't have time to cure it and get the inspector back out there. So we have to think about what you're doing when you put these numbers in here. 7, 5, 2 seems to work. And that is, of course, you have to know if you've got a closing date that allows that. But they should be descending numbers. And think about your closing date and when the buyer can get the inspector back out there. All these things come into play here. You need to give enough business days in the first blank, of course, for the seller to have gotten repairs done to start with. And some people have asked, what is this not seller paid repairs? We're referring here to the seller paid repairs in this last paragraph. It's referring to the repairs that the seller on a repair procedure has already agreed to do. In a repair procedure, the seller has agreed to do certain repairs. That's part of a repair procedure. Not seller paid repairs are things that somebody may be asking for outside of those that the contract already said the seller was required to take care of. Now, in due diligence, of course, that goes out the window because you ask for anything in due diligence. You only talk about the not seller paid repairs and seller paid repairs if you have a repair procedure contract. If seller successfully completes a repair agreement, the buyer shall comply with contract terms. Nothing's new here, but I wanted to emphasize it because I just had something else happen to one of my agents. It's just the same kind of thing. It sends a repair addendum, this repair addendum, and they put an expiration date in it, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But this says if seller successfully completes this repair agreement, the buyer shall comply with the contract terms. That means that buying the house. If the seller fails to complete repairs agreed upon in this repair agreement, the buyer has options. They shall accept the property in its present condition. This is not new. They can negotiate and reach agreement with the seller for different terms, that is, other repairs, compensation, price, reduction, escrow, or they can terminate this agreement by delivered notice and potentially seek legal remedies against the seller. This is important. I want to point it out because it's important for our agents to explain to the sellers and buyers, sellers, if you got a seller, if they don't complete these repairs, they agree to do it in this addendum. If they don't complete them, the buyer can back out right before closing. That needs to be pointed out to them. Then we move on to section 2 of the repair addendum. And what's been added here is the last sentence. This repair agreement replaces any agreed upon due diligence addendum. Therefore, buyers should include all desired due diligence repairs in this repair addendum. Again, just trying to make sure that they understand what they need to do. And then we move to the expiration clause. And this is where people get in trouble. When signed by a party and intended as a proposed addendum to the contract, this document represents a proposed addendum to the other party that may be rescinded any time prior to or expires at a certain time. Unless this proposed addendum to the contract is accepted by the other party in written form delivered prior to such deadline. Party's stated expiration of a proposed addendum does not extend any due diligence period, if any, and does not change the contract's time frame for the seller to respond on any repair procedure, if any. The purpose of this, guys, is to get the seller to respond quicker. You always want this expiration time to be within your due diligence period. Do not put it after the due diligence termination date. Some people are putting that in there, assuming that this automatically extends due diligence. It does not. It says it in the form, it says it over and over. It does not extend due diligence. And there's really only one thing new on this section, and that is where the date was revised at the bottom, a 9/2017 date. Moving along, the notice of termination form, which is SCR 313. This is what the old form looked like. And we have updated this form, and it is great. The SCR 313, notice of termination. It is number 7 in your handout if you want to follow along there. This now works for terminating many forms, not just a contract. This is a unilateral, which means it does not require both parties to sign. The words are still the same, but now we can use it for terminating different things, not just due diligence. So at the top we have notice of termination, and then we have a line under that. The line under the yellow line on the screen is so that you say what you're terminating. The purpose of this is now that you can be used to terminate many things, not just due diligence, as we said. So in this top line, you're going to write in what you're terminating. Maybe a SCR 310, or you could say subject to finance contract, or maybe a buyer agreement. Whatever you're terminating, you will write that there. And there's a yellow line under the seller's name. The purpose of that is just in case there's multiple sellers, you will have room to write them down. The only change here in this section is where the yellow is, it says tax map now. In the past, on the old form, it had TMS, so there's no really big change. Section 3 has no changes. Moving on to section 4. You see the sending party hereby delivers notice that the sending party is terminating the agreement or contract to buy and sell real estate. Residential or other is added in yellow. And if it's an other, you have a line to write it on. And that any required termination fee has been delivered prior to or simultaneously with this notice delivery. This yellow line, purpose of this here is you can actually write in there perhaps something like SCR 311 due diligence termination fee is attached. $1,000 check, number 20555. Or you might put in SCR 311 due diligence termination fee was wired to the seller, routing number confirmation, and give the number 49678, whatever. Or you might even put here, the parties agreed on a due diligence termination fee of 0, so no check is attached. Or you might want to write new no due diligence termination fee was required. That's the purpose of that line. Then our last paragraph, receipt acknowledgement, signatures, date, time by recipient party or recipient broker is requested but not required for notice of delivery. Notice, date, time of delivery can be written in by person delivering this notice if the recipient refuses to sign date or time. And then we have a yellow line. This yellow line could be used, you could say something like on November, maybe January 25th, 2018 at 10:30 a.m. Maybe Byron King delivered a SCR 313 to Liz Loadholt at Agent on Realty, and she refused to sign an acknowledgement receipt. So you just write that on the line. Again, our forms are trying to make life easier for you guys, not all complicated. And there's really no change here except for the at the bottom. Moving along, SCR 504, sale of buyer's real property contingency. This is what was revised 9/2017. We revised it again in November 2017, and that is number 8 in your handout for those who want to follow along. Really, this form is completely changed. The Forms Committee has made really strong efforts to try to simplify this form for all of us. So let's look at it. Now up top, pretty much the whole form has changed. So we're saying the SCR 310 or 300 or other, and if it's something other, if maybe it's a SCR 330 or there's some other sale contract, you would write that in there. Pretty much all of them are going to be the SCR 300 or 310 for the most part. Then you have number 1 is buyer's property. Address description. You want to write in the address of the property that the buyer needs to sell in order to buy our local property. And then under that, you've got boxes. You've got to check a box. It's primary residence. Is it a second home? Is it a vacation home? Is it a rental? Is it land? Is it commercial? Is it other? Check a box. The next line, is it a FSBO? Is it under contract that is attached? Is it under contract that's not attached? Is it listed by? And if it is listed, you put the name of the company who has the listing. Number 2 section. This contract is contingent upon the marketing and closing of the sale of the buyer's property no later than blank calendar days prior to closing date or on the closing date. This becomes a buyer's sale deadline. Notice it says calendar days. It doesn't say business days there. So it's on the marketing and the closing of the buyer's property no later than blank calendar days prior to closing date or at closing. This becomes your buyer's sale deadline. Should the sale of the buyer's property not close by the buyer's sale deadline, the buyer may terminate this contract by notice to the seller delivered no later than blank business days now, after the buyer's sale deadline. So put whatever time you want in there. Should the sale of the buyer's property not close by the buyer's sale deadline, the seller may terminate this contract by notice to the buyer delivered no later than blank business days after the buyer's sale deadline, unless the parties agreed on any of these. One of these two. Cash buyer verifies possesses purchase price in United States good funds, or the buyer's financing is not contingent upon selling the buyer's property. Sometimes we're going to have a buyer that can really qualify without selling the property, but they just want to sell the property. They're more comfortable. If you have a situation like that, you need to check one of these boxes up front when you're filling this out to keep the, so that the buyer can terminate, or to keep the seller from terminating if one of these situations occurs. So if your buyer has the cash and they really can close and they're a cash buyer, they just want to sell the other house, you need to check that box when you're filling this out in the beginning. Otherwise, if you don't do that, then the seller can terminate. But if you have one of these checks, then the seller can't terminate for that reason. Still on this addendum, the 504, if no party terminates via sale contingency, the parties file a contract without a sale contingency. If neither party terminates with the above paragraph, then the parties agree to proceed with the contingency. Number 3, the buyer's property duties. These are the duties of your buyer. Between this contract's effective date and the buyer's sale deadline, the buyer shall make only good faith efforts and actions to sell their buyer's property. Timely inform the seller and brokers of pertinent information regarding the sale of the buyer's property. Timely direct brokers or law firms to disclose pertinent information regarding the sale of the buyer's property. Within blank business days of the contract, this is the contract on the property they're selling, deliver to seller and brokers copy of each contract for the sale of the buyer's property. Within blank business days of the closing, to deliver the seller and brokers notice that the buyer property has closed. If buyer defaults or breaches these duties, the seller may seek remedies, that is, terminate or litigation. This is also new. Marketing and subsequent offers. The seller may continue to market the property and may accept any offer as a backup contract by using SCR 391. Note, MLS rules may require categorization of seller's listings as other than active. This is all new too. Upon seller delivering notice to the buyer of a subsequent offer from a cash buyer or a subsequent offer that does not contain an SCR 504 or buyer sale contingency, the buyer shall, within blank business days, choose and comply with A or B. This is your first right of refusal clause, guys, for those who, a lot of people call it that. A, deliver documentation to the seller that the buyer's property is under a contract of sale, scheduled to close by the buyer's sale deadline, with no contingencies other than financing and repairs. Or, remove the sale contingency only if closing of the buyer's property is not required for the buyer to obtain purchase money. If buyer does timely, properly comply with A or B, then the buyer remains in primary first contract position ahead of subsequent potential buyers, and seller may only accept the subsequent offer as a backup contract using SCR 391, which is your additional clauses addendum. And I'm going to go over that in a minute too. If the buyer does not timely, properly comply with A or B, then either party may terminate this contract by notice. And then we have our bottom section. The word witness has been left off because of all the digital signing, and there was no space to put the extra lines. So, and then on the very bottom, you see the 11/2017 as the revised date. Moving on, this is a SCR 505, which is the sale of buyer's real property contingency release. This was last revised in August of 2013, and it is the same. It has not been changed. Well, I'm sorry, I am wrong. There have just been a few changes here, and it was changed in November of 2017. It is number 9 in your handout. Apologize for that. It is a form that's not used very often, so I'm not spending a lot of time on it. There's no major changes here, really just a few words to make it a little easier to understand. The big item was here, it removed earnest money being refunded or returned to buyer. That was removed. And the witness lines and spots at the bottom for initials have been removed also. No big changes. Now, moving on to clauses for addendum. This is attachment number 10 in your handout. It is SCR 391. It was revised September of 2017. And I will tell you that the only changes here are under the backup clause, where it says before under the backup section, earnest money will be returned to buyer. That has been removed. It's been removed from everything, but that's what was removed from this. And the only other change on this form was the word witness has been removed. And of course, the revised date was changed there. I just wanted to real quickly go over all the things that this 391 does do for us, because it seems like I quite often hear people say, I've never heard of that. It covers deed restrictions and restrictions and covenants, survey, Coastal Titlelands and Wetlands Act, backup clause, agent disclosure, soil and water tests and water issues, permit contingencies, seller financing. If you've got some deal with the seller financing, there's a great paragraph in here to cover all of that, the seller financing. Financing information. Sometimes you have buyers that do not want to pay over a certain interest rate. They'll say, I am not paying, I'll buy this house, but I'm not paying more than 4.5% interest rate. Well, there's a paragraph here that can take care of that for you. The Foreign Investment Property Act, hazardous materials, and an as-is clause. So when you got somebody who wants to sell as-is, these things are here for you. It's great to have a buyer that's expressed interest and concern about interest rates, as I said, and it's great for your backup contracts. The short sale addendum, it's item 11 in your handout. It was revised in September of 2017. Due to the amount of wire fraud that's happening in our state, short sale, I skipped it. The only thing that was changed in here, in number 11 in your handout, is the earnest money being returned to the buyer has been removed, and the word witness has been removed. So that's really the only change. Now moving to the wire fraud, created in July of 2017. Due to the amount of wire fraud, the Forms Committee, prodded by Rod Smith of Myrtle Beach, asked Byron King and Nick providers to produce a form that we can use with our sellers and buyers. My hope is that having this form will also help to get the realtors to pay more attention to the seriousness of the situation. This form is on Zip Forms, SCR 610. This Zip Forms has now a special section called Zip Community. It's worth everybody looking into if you haven't already done so. They're touting it as a solution to the wire fraud solution. I love this form, and I ask my agents to use it on every sale. We can't talk about it enough with our clients to make sure they are so careful. Wire fraud, guys, is serious, as we said. If you've not been involved yourself, count yourself very lucky. I know of 2 cases with agent-owned realty alone. No, the clients did not lose their money, thank goodness, but came close. One was $50,000, one was $130,000. The attorneys in both of our cases actually paid the money. And some of you know and remember and saw the video, but Linda Hoverman O'Neill, the South Carolina realtor who became the victim of one of the biggest wiring scams in North and South Carolina in 2016. If you've not watched this video, you need to do so. You need to take every step possible to protect yourself and your clients and customers. This video will put the fear in you. Moving on, earnest money, which is SCR 620. The earnest money disclosure, it is number 13 in your handout. Created September 2017. This is a totally new form. I love this form. Even though our contract clearly states how earnest money is to be dispersed, I think it's a great idea to have buyers and sellers sign this form. It makes the agents talk about the subject one more time. This form just states again what our contract forms state, that the only way earnest money is to be dispersed by a broker in charge is if there's an agreement signed by both parties, a judge issues a disbursement form. I know in my office, I definitely have my agents, if agent owner is holding the earnest money, we definitely get this form signed. And today I'd like to close with my favorite saying, nothing is a problem till it's a problem. I talk with my realtors a lot about someone can go about not using correct forms, not doing things the correct way, and they may get by with it for a while. They may get by forever, but then they may not. Let's do things the correct way, and then we don't have to worry about things. Nothing is a problem until it's a problem. And we are here at SCR for you, the members. We're always striving to improve your real estate career and make your life easier. Hope you all got something out of this and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Liz. This is Byron King again. I just want to personally thank you for all your hard work and hours you put in. We're especially valued that you've been a chair of the Forms Committee in 2017. You're a practicing broker in charge and you're an instructor. So both of your webinars have been very useful, and we're going to record those. And realtors, we've had a lot of good feedback from realtors around the state. Had over 5,000 views of your first webinar. Just closing up, January 23rd, hope to see everybody at the Capitol Conference in Columbia. March 8th, hope to see you at the Women's Conference. Men can attend as well. And the lobbyists will be doing delegation days in 2018, so hope to see you at the State House shadowing the South Carolina Association of Realtors lobbyists. Mike, Chris, thanks again for producing and setting this thing up. Mike will archive all these webinars to the South Carolina Association of Realtors YouTube. The easiest way to get there is just go in your Google search engine, search SC Realtors YouTube. You can see both of Liz's webinars there, plus numerous other webinars on forms and other topics. Heads up, in 2018, the Forms Committee under Joey McMillan will be updating the buyer agency agreement and the listing agency agreement forms, those 4 forms. Right now, they're posted to screaltors.org as rough draft form for member feedback. Thanks to the Forms Committee, 2017, 2018, the Forms Advisory Committee, 2017, 2018, all the members that provided feedback on those forms posted on the screaltors.org website. And thanks to the Executive Committee for their work in finalizing some edits. And that concludes this webinar for today. Thanks for tuning in.